Hello, in this video I am going to explain the difference between debit and credit. I recommend that you watch my previous videos on debt and credit history, score, etc. so you can get a better understanding of what debt and credit is. And now I'll explain the difference between debit and credit. I'll first of all explain it in a very accounting sort of way, and then next I'll explain it in a slightly less accounting way. So debit, when they the debit, this increases the assets and the expense account. This is for all the accountants out there, or I would hope you would already know this, but the would-be accountants. And credit, this increases the liability accounts, liability, revenue, and the equity accounts. Equity accounts. So at the moment, this probably isn't doing much for you. So let me just put it another way. The debit is immediate, payments, and credit is delayed payments for goods or services. And let me put it a different way. I'm sure you've all heard of debit cards versus credit cards. This is probably the best way to explain it. So a debit card, if you have £500 in there, you can't purchase more than £500 worth of goods or services. Yes, there are overdraft facilities, but ignoring the overdraft facility, because that's more of a new invention. The idea of debit and credit is not, it's been around for hundreds, thousands of years even, the idea of debit and credit. So in that context, that's what we're going to discuss. So with a debit card, if you have X amount, that's all you can spend. You can't spend any more. And as soon as you make a purchase, so if I have £500, if I buy, let's say, a phone for 400, I now have 500 minus 400, which equals 100. But this is based on the money that I have, and it's immediately deducted. Whereas a credit card, I can make a payment. So buy, let's say, this same phone for £400, and depending on how my credit card or my line of credit, as it can also be called, especially for businesses, is set up, I may have to pay that off at the end of the month. End of the month. Also, depending on how your credit is set up, you may have to give interest, and it may also be if you pay by a certain date, there's no interest. If you go over the date, there'll be, let's say, 2% interest per day or per week or per month, and it can be pretty expensive with credit cards. So debit is anything that you are spending right now. Credit or credit cards is anything that is delayed. So you are getting some goods or services and you are paying for it later on. It could be something like a loan, or it could be a product or service. The last thing I want to show you is if you was to actually draw out, like, say, debit and credit, like so. Let me use the same colors. So it was orange and blue. Shouldn't have used blue. Shouldn't have used blue. I will use this pink color. Pink. Debit, credit. So debit is always on the left. So all debit transactions. So let's say phone, £400. Let's say car, let's say £10,000. Let's say on credit, we buy a laptop for £2.5 grand. Let's say it's a MacBook. Not that crazy expensive for a MacBook. They easily go beyond that if you customize them. And let's say if we buy, or let's see if we have office rent, and we pay that at the end of the month. So that's it's on credit, and let's say that's £2,000 a month, for example. So credit is always on the left, right. Debit is always on the left. Debit is always increasing the asset or the expense account, thus reducing the liability, revenue, and equity accounts. Credit is always increasing the liability, revenue, and equity accounts, thus reducing the assets and expense account. So debit is what you immediately purchase right now with the actual money you've got in your bank. Credit is an amount of money that the bank or some other financial institution lets you spend, but you do not have access to those funds, and it is with a promise that you will pay that back, usually with some sort of interest. That's it. That's the difference between debit and credit. Feel free to pop me a message on the Discord page. There'll be a link in the description if you have any more questions. And as usual, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.